And so to kind of respect your time, I want to make sure that we can just get right to the information that you can share with us, and then think about how land use and D10 can support your proposal. And so with that, Jimmy, I'll just hand it over.
Great. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really pleased that you guys are engaged this early on in the process. So I've met, I think, two of you before. Alex, I don't know if I've met you, but good to see you.
Nice to meet you, Jimmy.
Yeah, I work for the City of St. Paul in the Department of Public Works. I've been there for, I don't know, maybe 18 months. And then before that, I was with a consultant firm that does bike and pedestrian planning and design. And that's, for the most part, that's kind of what I work on at the city. Transportation, really anything. So a lot of transit stuff, but a lot of biking and walking stuff also. I think I came to you all at one point to talk about the bike plan update, and that's another thing that I'm leading, which continues to be pushed for more pressing priorities. But I think, just as an update, as long as I'm here, the kind of the springtime engagement where we share, or where I share kind of the draft updates. So the draft updated network, that'll probably happen in the next few months. And we're still hoping to get that bike plan adopted by City Council at some point this summer. So as long as I'm here, I thought I'd tell you that. I will for sure be in touch with you all, and as well as all the other districts, about how I can come and share the draft plan with you. So I'll make contact with you all for that. So, but that's not what I'm here to talk about tonight. I'm here to talk about a different project. I'm going to share my screen. I always forget on Zoom how to do it. I think you can see my screen.
Oh,
cool. Great. So specifically, I'm here to talk tonight about an application we are submitting for funding for pedestrian improvements near Chelsea Heights Elementary. And I don't know if you all are familiar with it. The Met Council every 2 years offers something called a regional solicitation, which doesn't really mean a lot, except that it's they decide what projects around the 7-county metro area get funding, and it's federal funding. So federal funding comes in, goes to the Met Council, and then they decide and rank all the projects that have come in over the last few months, and they award this money. And it's there are many different categories. So there's a pedestrian category. So all the projects for pedestrian related, sidewalks, and it can be kind of, you can see how some projects would certainly kind of cross over to other categories. But then there's a bicycles and trails category, and then there's a transit enhancement and expansion category, and then there's projects that apply to get funding for driver, or for cars and roads and bridges. This one, of course, this is a category, it's safe routes to school category, which is, of course, we're talking about pedestrian and bicycle improvements. So, but specifically, they award projects near schools. The solicitation opens every other year. So, in recent years, St. Paul, St. Paul is submitting projects for just about every category. And I think there's like 11 categories or something. We've been successful. A lot of like the Capital City Bikeway Network in downtown St. Paul is all funded, or not all funded, but a large chunk of that is funded by this regional solicitation. We've been successful with safe routes to school categories. So a couple of years ago, Expo Elementary had sidewalks constructed that were paid for by this big pot of money. Washington Tech had sidewalks and bump outs. Bruce Vento Elementary is a project that I am leading that we'll be constructing next year. And that'll be a bike lane on Arkwright, bump outs along Arkwright and Case, and sidewalks in the area. So there's this kind of long horizon, which I'll tell you about in terms of the idea, which is where we are right now, and the actual construction. And I'm sad to say that it's about 5 years. So sometimes stuff happens sooner, 4 to 5 years. Sometimes stuff happens sooner. But that's just the arc of this funding. I wish it could go a lot faster, but that's just the world we live in. It takes time to get that funding to construct. So that's the actual, pot of money. It's called the regional solicitation. And so we're going after the safe routes to school category within that regional solicitation to fund pedestrian improvements near Chelsea Heights. And Maggie, I think you mentioned you're familiar. Yeah, right. So there is a safe routes to school plan for Chelsea Heights Elementary, and that was created in 2017. So even a bigger arc of, when, improvements were actually brainstormed, and there was this whole group, this kind of coalition that came together, folks from the city, folks from the district, folks from the school. D10 was involved then. I even want to say maybe a council member was involved, but anyhow, so this was created in 2017. It brought together all these folks and brainstormed ideas for street improvements, but also kind of programmatic. What can we do at Chelsea Heights to encourage kids to walk and bike, families give it a shot. And that's all. The programs are kind of handled by the district. The city participates in those, but the district, which is one thing that's really great about St. Paul Public Schools, is in 2019, they received money from the state to hire a Safe Routes to School coordinator by the name of Sarah Stewart. And that has made the Safe Routes to School program in the city kind of grow by leaps and bounds, because there's a lot of safe routes to school work that doesn't really fit into one person's or staff's siloed role. The city is kind of in charge of physical improvements to the street, but there's all this other half of things that can happen immediately, like to encourage kids to walk and bike. And those really fall under the district and at the school level. And without kind of a coordinator, those would kind of fall through the cracks because people are so busy. Teachers are really busy, administrators are busy, families are busy. So that's one great thing that the city or St. Paul Public Schools has going for it, is that they have a safe routes to school coordinator at the district. And really the only other districts in the state that have that are Minneapolis and Rochester, maybe Richfield. Anyways, so what you see is from that plan in 2017, and you see, Hamlin goes north-south here, Hoyt goes east-west. And from that plan, there were kind of these pretty high-level recommendations that we should improve some of these crossings, especially of Hoyt and Hamlin. And that's exactly what we're asking for money to do, is to construct those. And so this is something that I'm going to submit as part of the application. And you can see similar, I can zoom in here, right from the plan. And we talked with Principal, is it Brink or Burke? I can never remember.
Brink.
Okay, yeah. And we've talked, of course, internally at the city, and we referenced the plan that kind of brought everybody together a number of years ago. And so these are the crossings that we are going to prioritize for either bump outs or median islands. We don't know yet because we're not that far along. We don't even know if we have the money yet. And it's even so early on in the process that I'm not even sure. There's kind of a priority, like we want to prioritize Hamlin and Hoyt. We know that Hoyt and Huron is a crossing because of the front door right there. Nebraska and Hamlin. I mean, Hamlin carries the highest amount of traffic and, arguably perhaps has the biggest speeding problem. but you're most competitive, of course, when you ask for money for crossings near schools. We would like to get funding for these, but we don't know if the funding would be given for ones kind of further away from school. So we're going to kind of prioritize the ones closest to school in terms of asking for the money for right here. And then, kind of as we go further south, who knows if we'll get the money for that. So that's kind of the project that we're asking for money. So it's, generally it's pedestrian improvements TBD at these intersections along Hamlin and then Hoyt and Huron. Any questions right away? I just have a couple more minutes of things to talk about. Any reactions to these crossings that are circled?
Is there any chance that the Midway Hamlin one, despite being the farthest from the school, would get a little bit more of a bump just because it's such a major crossing to get into the park?
Yeah, that's a great question. We talked about this and said, if there's a pot of money, what are the priorities? And because I do think that this would be like right up there with these ones. The only thing is that if we ask for money for this one, I'm a little concerned that the Met Council is going to say, well, that's not even that close to the school, and then throw out our application. It's kind of like a strategy of what you want to ask for versus, what is the probably on a neighborhood level, what's the biggest concern. I think for because it's the safe routes to school category, we would probably focus on these. But we're going to see how far our dollar would stretch if we're awarded this. If that makes sense.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. So that's kind of where we are now. Who we've talked to, of course, you all. I mentioned that we've talked with the principal, but then also, I'm in close coordination with, weekly meetings with Sarah Stewart, who's the Safe Routes to School coordinator at the district. We kind of thought about all the schools all over the city and, who we should pursue this opportunity for, what school we should. And I think it came down to, Chelsea Heights has had this plan for some time, and we have plans for other schools that we've pursued improvements at. So it's kind of like Chelsea Heights' turn. I've also, of course, gotten support from Councilmember Jalali, and then I kind of forget where the line is, but Council President Brenmoen also is aware of this. And then also the city of Falcon Heights, it's just this corner right here, but, we didn't want to propose something that they weren't aware of. So I mentioned there's kind of this long timeline arc. This application is due 1 week from tomorrow. And then later this year, we would get a decision from the Met Council to say yay or nay, you get the funding. And then sadly, it's kind of a waiting thing. So construction would be 2026. So it could be 2027, and we've asked for it for 2026. So at least, we're looking 4 versus 5 years. So I know that's, especially on the school level, that's kind of disheartening. Because things at schools happen so quickly. Unfortunately, that's just the way that this funding pot works, is kind of that's the arc. You mentioned how you could help, and I think the original reason I got in touch with you all was for a letter of support. I think that's not actually required for this, but I think it would be a great asset and a great bump to our application. And then I think looking further down the road, if we are successful getting this money, then, we're going to need to think a little bit more about what kind of improvements and how to prioritize those if we have some extra money, so that's kind of that's in the following years. But I think immediately a letter of support. So open it up for conversation. That's all I have for you all.
Thank you, Jimmy. So we knew that this was coming. And so the first thing I'll do is just ask if there are any questions out there for Jimmy. And seeing none, I know that the ask was for a letter of support. And so I will put the language for this, but I would move that the Como Community Council supports Public Works funding proposal for pedestrian improvements near Chelsea Heights Elementary School through the Met Council's regional solicitation safe routes to school category. Does that sort of encompass what you're looking for here?
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean. If do you often, I mean, like, is there actually like a letter?
Yep.
Could,
and
okay,
so
okay.
And so the motion is just we bring the motion to the committee, which is quite small today, but bring the motion to the committee, and from there then it goes to our full board for approval, or sometimes for kind of post approval if the letter was due before the board meets next time.
Okay.
This is one we've supported similar safe routes to school type things in the past, so I wouldn't anticipate this would be an issue. But this sort of gives us the power then to write a letter of support that's more detailed and shares some rationale.
Great. Yes, you said it perfectly, Maggie. That's exactly what we're looking for.
Right.
Yeah, Maggie, I'd second that. And like you said, I think the 19th is our next meeting. So this is due the 14th. Well, it'll be a post approval.
Yep.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Jimmy, would it be most helpful to just when that letter is packaged and with our letterhead and everything, to send that just directly to you to include with your application?
That'd be wonderful. You could just email me the PDF if you're willing.
Yep.
And it can be, it's just going as an attachment. So, anytime really, like by the end of the day on the 13th would be just fine.
Yeah, I'm sure I'll get it to you well before then.
Okay. Yeah, so this is an exciting thing for me because I actually wrote this plan as a consultant like 5 years ago.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it wasn't even in I wasn't at the city. It was a totally different. I mean, it was like one of my first projects ever as at this consultancy. So this really is. I mean, fast forward 6 years and now I'm at the city. So this is fun for me.
Yeah, that's cool to be able to secure funding for it, and 5 years later.
For sure. Yeah.
And Mike's got to make sure you hang around until it actually gets done.
Yes,
so
exactly.
you can shepherd it fully through the process.
Yes,
so,
that would be the true. Yeah.
This motion is on the table. If there's no additional discussion, then I will call it to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye or give a thumbs up. Anyone opposed? Any abstentions? The motion passes.
Wonderful.
So Jimmy, we got kind of a slick system for sending out these letters of support. So I feel like Chevik's got a pretty quick turnaround time for the most part. It will come from land use as opposed to the full board, because we won't have time to bring it to the full board meeting, but it'll still got the District 10 seal of approval to some extent here.
That's great. Like I said, this is kind of icing on the cake for the application. So I think anything you guys can do will be appreciated. And like I said, we'll make our application stronger.
That's crazy that it takes 10 plus years to go from idea to construction.
It really is. And I think kind of candidly, if you look at some of these other categories that I mentioned, I can see that some of these, especially big road projects, that those can take time. And some of those funding categories I don't even know what they are because I don't apply for them, but I mean, millions upon millions upon millions of dollars. And this is, and those ask for all sorts of previous engagement. And this is we're constructing bump outs that arguably will not take away any parking. And it's kind of just give us the money and we can do this next year if you want us to. it's too bad, but that's kind of what the world we live in, I suppose.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I didn't realize that was that long of a life cycle. I was a
Yeah, and
civil
there's-
engineer for 3 or 4 years after college, so. it's kinda
Okay.
cool.
And there are other, to be honest, Alex, there are other funding categories that, or I should say funding sources that are a little bit quicker. For example,
Sure.
just this year, MnDOT had a Safe Routes to School infrastructure grant, and we had another plan for Maxfield Elementary, which is on Victoria and St. Anthony. And they have like a really high need for some of these improvements, and MnDOT offers that funding available next year. So we applied at the end of 2021, were awarded at the beginning of 2022, and have to do all the design and construction design before it's constructed next year. So that was like, great. This is, oh, here comes my dog. So there are other pots of money, but they're few and far between, which is why we really rely on this regional solicitation.
Sure,
Mhm.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's on your third slide there, Jimmy, where there's the picture of the line of kids walking to school.
Yep.
You brought that picture up and I was like, oh, that's my son.
No way, which,
The little blonde kid in the front with the
Are you
Gophers
there?
t-shirt on. Yeah, and he's in middle school now.
Okay.
So like, as opposed to, I think this must be like second or third grade when he had the dog backpack. So just to
That's
really
incredible.
show how long it has.
That's funny.
well, this was actually, Maggie, I took this photo, and this was at a walk to school day. They're called like a remote drop and
Yeah.
walk, where, remember that, where like,
Yep, they dropped him
Well-
off a little while ago. So that must have been, it was pre-COVID, right? Because it was.
I was looking through my old Google photos, and I think that this was dated like October 2019.
That sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy.
That's funny.
So just, yes, this helps highlight kind of how the longevity of this. And I will just say, for whatever it's worth, I was visiting with the Chelsea Heights PTO at their last PTO meeting. We talked a little bit about this. And I think that, the sense is, yes, we know these things take a really long time. However, we can also recognize that like some of the things that are happening right now are things that were put into motion 5 and 10 years ago. And so this is sort of part of that like long-term stewardship, even if it isn't for the kids who are there right now, it is sort of for the community in the future, the future residents and future students for that school.
Yeah, I appreciate that sentiment. Like, I mean, to be honest, 2017 does not seem like that long ago, and here we are, and we're going after something to construct it. In 2019, I cannot believe that was when this was, because that seems like I don't know. Yeah, it's just funny how time works, I guess. Yeah.
Well, I'll ask if there are any other questions for Jimmy at this point. Seeing none, that motion did pass, so we'll get that letter out to you as soon as we can here. But thank you for, kind of holding the hand of this slowly over time while it makes its way through the labyrinthian system of funding and city works projects.
Well, it sounds like you've been involved the whole way too. So thank you all for convening these and putting your stamp of approval on it, because it means a lot. So
Absolutely.
I will be back to probably in front of you all for different project in kind of like in the next few months for the bike plan. So I'll just be in touch, and I'll see you then, I suppose.
Thank you, Jimmy.
That was
All right.
great.
Well, have a great night, everybody.
Take care.
Bye.